I was I was in a home with a father who was a pedophile, and the damage that he did to me was beyond what anyone could imagine. I remember when I was about 9, 10 or so, sitting in temple and watching, our rabbi was talking about God. And I was listening very carefully because I really had a sense that God, a very strong sense of God being in my life, but I didn't quite know what it meant. So I thought, oh, I'm going to listen to this part. And he kept talking around God. He kept saying God could be this way, or he could be that way, or he could be, maybe he's like this and maybe he's like that. And I was very dissatisfied with what he was saying. I wanted something constructive and something concrete from him. And I remember thinking to myself, he has no idea who God is. And this is the rabbi, but he has no idea who God is. And then the next thought I had was, well, I guess I'll have to find him on my own. In fact, I did not begin to have memories of any sort until I was 42 years old. And I believe that God, in his mercy, kept those memories from me. Because even at 42, as a fully mature woman, I couldn't handle remembering what had happened to me. And I went a little crazy, and I wound up in a mental hospital for about 3 weeks and began to sort out. But if I had had those memories any earlier, I'm positive that I would have done a whole lot more damage to myself than I actually did. As a young child, I always hated my father. And I never knew why. I always was ashamed of how I felt about him. I mean, of course, we all know that shame is like the major emotion that children feel. But I never knew why I hated him. And it took until I was 42 years old before I realized, oh, that's why I did. That's why I felt the way I did. I was very self-destructive. I pretty much acted it out with a lot of drug abuse, sexual, behavior. I was just wild and kind of, outrageous and very aggressive toward men. At one job, I met this very interesting man. Alan was very attractive. He was a young, kid with a little red sports car, and of course I immediately zoomed in on that, and he had been saved for 6 weeks, and he did not know that you don't witness to Jews. He knew nothing about, all he knew was that he was just crazy in love with Jesus. And I just thought, well, that's really odd, because here he is, this handsome guy with his little sports car and a good job, and he's talking to me about Jesus. And he just kept talking to me about Jesus all the time. And then I met all of his friends, and they all talked about Jesus. I remembered looking in their eyes, because Alan had a light in his eyes that no one else I knew ever had. All of the people that he knew who knew the Lord had this light in their eyes. And I thought, wow, I want that. And one day he invited me to go to Church on the Way, which is at the time was a huge church headed by Jack Hayford. I sat there and listened to this message about the prodigal son, and I identified with everything he was describing, how this person didn't value his heritage and demanded his inheritance and went off and just squandered it. And the father, instead of being angry with him, put a robe of white on him, a pure white robe. And I remember thinking how filthy I felt inside. And if that had been me, how much I identified with this prodigal son. And I was totally undone by that. There was something about him saying, "But I feel filthy inside, but the Father only sees the purity in me." And that is what did me in. That is when I said, I want this. I want this salvation for myself. When I accepted Yeshua as my Messiah, I had been walking around my apartment just feeling like I'm going insane. This is insane. What I just did was the most insane thing that I could ever do. And yet inside I thought, this is the only and greatest thing that I've ever done for myself. And on the third day, I kept thinking, why am I so happy? It was so odd for me to feel happy. I felt joy. I'd never felt joy before. I forgave and I forgive and it's not like, oh, it's really hard for me to do this and I've got to work at forgiving him. It's just done. I have forgiven my father for what he did, and it's done. But it was a complete gift from God that I was able to do this. And I am so thankful, because if I had to sit there and figure out, okay, how am I going to forgive this man for completely ruining my whole childhood and my perception of myself and how I lived and how much anger I've had in my life? There's no way. It's impossible. But with God, nothing is impossible. And even to this day, I can't say why, other than feeling like it was just dropped in my lap, that suddenly all of that rage and feeling of betrayal was just gone. There's some things that happen to you in life that you can't fix yourself. And you need someone greater to fix you. And I'm so thankful that I found the only one who could possibly fix what happened to me.